So let's start with birthdays. Sue Scott, September 13th, Jim Hudson, and September 14th, Ken Saunders and Ed Atchison. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. And a reminder about our Believe to Achieve event for the foundation. It will be held virtually, as you know, on September 19th, and it's really important that we continue to support the 3 organizations that we have supported over the years. They need our help every bit or more right now as in a normal year, because they are working through their adjustments with the pandemic as well. So as you know, we support locally the Autism Society, the Down Syndrome Association, and Stepping Stones for Camp Allen. So 3 great organizations. You'll notice, you'll see actually later this week that the online silent auction will be announced and will start. So it's a great opportunity to contribute and show our ongoing support. And 100% of the net proceeds go directly to those 3 organizations. On a different topic, I just want to say thank you to the club for the wonderful turnout on Tuesday night for a service project. We met at Mountain View Park in Newtown. We had an open-air pavilion. We were able to pack 500 backpacks with PPE for the students at Roselawn Condon School. It was a great project. We had 21 people turn out for it. So because of that, we were done in half the time that we expected. A lot of fun, great participation. And there are 2 more chances this month for hands-on service activities. One is we need some volunteers, a few volunteers to help deliver Believe to Achieve silent auction items to the people who bid on those. So the week of September 21st, if you'd like to help with that, please let Bill Stilley know. We do need drivers who would come downtown to the Rotary office, grab the prizes or the gifts that people have bid on, and take them to their homes somewhere in the I-275 loop. And also, just talking about those backpacks with PPE, we need a few drivers to help deliver those to Roselawn Condon School on September 22nd. So if you'd like to help with the delivery process for those backpacks, please let Bill Stilley know. And members in the news, first of all, congratulations to Rotarian Mary Beth Polomanos, now Walters, on her recent marriage to David Walters. They were married on Saturday, September 5th, in Spokane, West Virginia. And please keep Rotarian Al Conscious and his family in your thoughts and prayers as they mourn the loss of Al's mother, who passed away on September 8th. And please keep Rotarian Bob Prosperi in your thoughts and prayers. He successfully underwent surgery on his finger this past week and is on the road to recovery. So let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. And in terms of next week's meeting, our guest speaker will be John Morris Russell, the conductor of the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. So great speaker, great to have him. And now I'd like to switch gears and introduce our great speaker for today. Tim Steigerwald is the president and CEO of Messer Construction Company. And Tim was named chairman of Messer Inc. and CEO of Messer Construction Company in 2019. And in these roles, he's responsible for the strategic direction of the company, also ensuring that the company lives up to its purpose, building better lives for their customers, communities, and each other. He oversees Messer Construction Company, Messer Financial Services, and the various subsidiaries of these companies with a focus on fostering an environment for employees' professional growth, commitments to their clients. Tim began his career with Messer in 1984, working as a co-op while earning his bachelor's degree in construction engineering and management from Purdue University. He joined Messer full-time in 1988 and earned his MBA from Xavier University in 1993. And during the next 25 years, Tim advanced in the company from project engineer to project manager and then to senior project executive overseeing multiple job sites. Notable projects he worked on during his tenure in Cincinnati included University Hospital, Newport on the Levee, and the bank's parking and infrastructure. And Tim is married and has 5 children, ages 18 to 28. He lives in Loveland, and he has visited our club in the past and is a friend of Steve Haber. Tim, welcome to Rotary. It's great to have you back.
Thank you very much. So I can cut 5 minutes off my presentation after hearing that bio. I'd like to start by thanking Doug Bolton. Doug invited me to speak today, and I very much appreciate that. Doug and Cincinnati Cares have been very impactful on our company. We've engaged them to help us better understand how our young professionals are engaging in the community, how they want to give back to the community, and we've done a number of surveys and other things with Doug. So if you haven't used Doug for that service, I'd highly recommend it. You'll be enlightened by what you find from Cincinnati Cares. Also, I'd like to thank the few folks in the room whom I know and a couple of folks on the Zoom call who reached out and said they were excited to hear me speak today, so thanks for making me feel welcome. A few things that weren't in the bio. I grew up in Lawrenceburg, and when I was getting ready to go to college, I'm one of 7 kids. My mom and dad told me that I could go anywhere I wanted to go to college or not at all, but whatever I decided, I had to pay for it. So UC was just 30 miles up the road, and I had gone to school here in Cincinnati at St. Xavier High School, so I was familiar with Cincinnati, but I couldn't afford tuition. So I ended up at Purdue, which is no slouch university, probably a Purdue fan or two in the crowd. And I was fortunate once I was at Purdue in the civil engineering program to find Messer as a co-op employer. I interviewed in 1984 on a Saturday morning. Saturdays were work days. Pete Strange interviewed me. He's a fairly intimidating fellow for a young professional. I'm sure many of you know Pete. And I made it through the interview. And the rest is history. I started building my career that day. After starting full-time, I followed a very traditional career path at Messer, as Brett outlined, and that really carried me all the way through the 90s. By the way, looking at the video, it's ironic that on the morning of the 9/11 attacks in New York City, I was at my job site down on the riverfront banks building the foundations underneath the Freedom Center. We did the parking garage and structure. And I remember driving to the office after my 7 a.m. meeting and listening on the radio to what was happening in New York City and just like everybody else being floored. But it is interesting that 19 years later, here we sit and still struggling with the challenges in the world around us and trying to make it through every day. So I'll comment on some of those. During the 90s, Messer changed a lot. We bought the company from the Messer family in 1990. We were, prior to that, a family-owned business, and the rules of engagement at Messer were put your head down, shut up, and work hard. And you don't need to know any of the details of what the business or where the company is going. Post-1990, Pete Strange and Tom Kekes changed the culture of our organization to be one that was focused on engaging our employees, empowering our employees, and figuring out a way for each one of us to make a difference in our careers because of our jobs at Messer. So that was really impactful to watch. By the late 90s, we had opened an office in Lexington, Kentucky, an office in Columbus, Ohio, and we were starting our planning for an office in Louisville, Kentucky. And it dawned on me that if I were going to someday be one of the leaders of the business, I needed to know how region offices worked. So I went to Pete and Tom and I volunteered to move to Columbus. They had asked me earlier in my career and I had declined because my daughter had a blood disease and we were very tied to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. But by the late 90s, she was doing better, and we picked up our 5 children, including a 2-month-old, and in the summer of 2001 moved to Columbus, and I ran the operations in our Columbus office. 4 years later, Pete came back to me and said, hey, I think you figured out how to do the operation side. Now we'd like for you to open an office. So we moved again, and we moved to Indianapolis and opened our first office, only office in Indiana, but the first time we'd really opened an office where we had never done a project before. We, for our entire 60-year history up to 1990, worked in Lexington and Louisville and Columbus, so we were a known quantity. We had only done one project, if anybody's familiar with downtown Indy, on the Circle. It was a J.C. Penney store built in 1954, and it had since been displaced by the Anthem corporate office building on the Circle. So nobody knew anything about Messer and certainly didn't care about a project that was built 50 years before. But we built a business there, and we started to figure out how do you engage in new communities in the same way that we'd always engaged in Cincinnati. Fast forward 5 more years, 2010, Tom took over as CEO of Messer. Pete stayed on as chairman for another 5 years, but Tom took over the day-to-day operations of the business. And Tom immediately after taking over asked me to take on a new role. He said, I would like for you to lead the sales operation for the company. And I said, I need to talk to my wife about this one because this meant travel. So I went home that night and I told my wife, I'm going to take this job because I think it's a great advancement opportunity, but I promise you I will be home every night by 9 o'clock to put the kids to bed. And I lived up to that for the next 4 years. I would leave Indianapolis at 3 o'clock in the morning, drive to Knoxville, Tennessee, get there by 9 o'clock, have 4 or 5 hours of meetings and get right back in the car and go back home. When we opened our Charlotte office, at least I could get a flight to and from Charlotte in a day, and it made it work for that part of my life. But the other thing Tom did in 2010 is he started pestering me about moving back to Cincinnati. So at the end of each year, 2010, 2011, 2012, each annual review, the question was, hey, I really like you to move back to Cincinnati. Can you move back this year? And I would say no. And finally he said, well, why are you so stubborn about this? And I said, well, when I moved from Columbus to Indianapolis, Pete Strange gave me a Harvard Business Review article called The Federalist Model. And it talked about decentralized leadership, executives from an organization residing in various offices. And by the way, the CEO doesn't necessarily have to live in the city where the home office is. Tom listened intently. I finished my story and Tom said, yeah, but Pete's retired and I'm in charge now. You're moving back to Cincinnati. Ironically, what I had told Pete is I won't move again until my youngest is out of high school. My youngest is a senior this year, so you can see Tom won the battle. So we came back to Cincinnati, and it really kind of tells the story of my evolution of growing up inside the organization. I have been a apprentice for the CEO job for the last 10 years. Tom retired at the end of last year, and I took over as CEO October 1st, and it's been a really rewarding experience for me. Messer is a privately owned business. We are an ESOP. We're 100% owned by our employees, and we are what I would call an ESOP that was in the spirit of what ESOPs were envisioned to be. Our largest shareholder, who is not me, is actually older than me, but he owns less than 3% of the company. So it was broadly diversified ownership. You can't take it with you. When you retire from Messer, you have to sell back your ownership interest in the company, and it recirculates to the next generation of Messer leaders. I don't believe there's a more powerful ownership structure to engage and empower your employees and serve your customers than an ESOP, so I'm very bullish on that. A little bit about our business. We have 10 regional offices in 5 states: North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. Each one of those regional offices has a region leader who's also an executive officer of the company, and it's very much in that spirit of creating professional growth opportunities for our people. Each one of those region leaders is running a $100 million plus construction business, so a mid-sized construction company in that city where they reside. They have P&L responsibilities, and while we have a structural operating model that we all follow, each one of those regions takes on a little bit of the personality of the region leader. and it's a really great thing to watch. We are very focused on creating professional growth opportunities for every employee. So we focus less on individual skills for an individual job and more on creating leadership development skills and skills for them to grow people behind them in the organization. And that's kind of the flavor of what you just heard with my career. Our market segments traditionally have been healthcare and higher education, and more recently, aviation, industrial, science and technology, and federal military work. And I'll comment in a minute about where we see those markets going in the age of COVID. Each one of our cities also focuses on some segment of public civic work. So here in Cincinnati, we're best known for our work in the arts. We did the music hall revitalization, Shakespeare Theater, the ensemble renovation, and if you've driven up 71 recently, you've seen our work going on at the ballet right next to the Baldwin building. So we're very proud of our contribution back to the arts community in Cincinnati. In terms of the values that we follow every day, we are very focused first and foremost on safety. There is no bigger tragedy than working on a job site where there's a fatality. When I was a co-op, I had the misfortune of being on 3 different jobs where there were fatalities. And in the 1980s, it was run-of-the-mill. For every $500 million of work that was put in place, 4 people would die. And that's just the way it was. So we have changed the culture around safety. Today we focus on zero injury. Across our 10 cities and 110 job sites, we have about 7,000 workers coming on our job sites every day. This year, we'll have 190 out of 260 work days where those 7,000 workers go home exactly the way they came to work, without even a Band-Aid on their finger with a scratch. We think we can achieve zero injury every work day of the year, and that's what we strive to do. I already mentioned leadership development as a fundamental cultural value of our company. We're also very focused on creating opportunities for everyone in the company, no matter what their title or role is, and so making sure that they get the development skill sets they need to do their jobs better. We are unique as a billion-dollar-plus construction company in still self-performing work. Most large general contractor construction managers get out of the labor business. It's too risky, it's too hard to manage, it's too hard to get your workforce where you need to be when you work in multiple cities. We've stayed in the self-performance business. Out of our 1,400 employee headcount, we have 600 tradespeople, carpenters, laborers, cement finishers, and operating engineers, and these are the people who actually build our buildings every day. I learned early in my career that those tradespeople are the people who either make and break you or break you. Just like any service industry or manufacturing business, it's the people on the line or directly interfacing with the customer that make a difference. In the construction industry, that's our craft force. When I was a co-op in my first job back in 1984, I was working on a senior living facility up in Dayton, Ohio. And the project manager and the carpenter foreman and I would meet at Tri-County Mall, and I'd ride up with them every morning. And one morning on the way up, the carpenter foreman said to the project manager, "I need 30 more 16-foot 2x4s to finish the formwork for the concrete foundations." And the project manager yelled at the foreman and told him he'd already exceeded his budget for materials on the job and he was not going to buy any more 2x4s. So we got to the job site, and the carpenter foreman and I put on our tool belts and hard hats, and we walked out to the job. And he said, "I want you to watch what happens today because you're going to learn a valuable lesson." He got out to the job and he told the 4 carpenters and 3 laborers to take off their tool belts and take their hammers and go over to the scrap pile and pull all the nails out of the scrap 2x4s and to scab 2x4s together. Take 2 8-foots, put an 8-foot in the center, and nail them together so we had enough 16-foot 2x4s to do the job. The project manager walked the project every day twice, at lunchtime and at 3:30. So the day before, he saw the progress at the end of the work shift, and 11:30 that morning, he came out to the job site, and he started yelling at the foreman and saying, "You have not done anything since yesterday. What in the world are you doing?" And I said, "I did exactly what you told me to do, scrap together 2x4s. He spent 3 times as much money on labor that morning, as he did on 30 16-foot 2x4s. I'll never forget that. Our job as leaders is to plan the work, provide the tools and the resources and the equipment our tradespeople need. But at the end of the day, without those tradespeople, we don't build any buildings. The final value that I'll comment on is diversity. We have been in a 20-year journey to try to increase diversity and inclusion in our company. In the late 90s, Tom charged the leaders of the company to focus on supplier diversity. We were doing 1% to 2% spend a year with diverse suppliers. And it was partly driven because our customers wanted it, but Tom actually believed it would make a difference in our communities. So we started to focus on it. In 2002, Tom said, I'd like for you, in addition to my role in Columbus, to lead the company effort to increase supplier diversity. So we muddled along with some outside consultants. And 3 years later, in 2005, it dawned on me that until it's core to our business plan that we care about supplier diversity and we set goals to achieve it, we're never going to cross the threshold. In 2005, we hired Stan Williams. He hired 2 other staff people. This year, in 2020, 20% of our outside spend will be with certified minority and women-owned businesses, $270 million of spend. We're committed to it because it makes a difference for our communities. So let me change gears for just a second. The folks shared some thoughts about what I might comment on. I'll start with COVID. COVID has not made a huge impact on our business this year. We did go through a 2 or 3 week period, late March, early April, where some of our customers, especially our higher education customers, put projects on hold. One particular project was deferred indefinitely and we believe will never get built. But by and large, our healthcare customers said, can you get done quicker? Can you finish your project so we can get beds back in operation? Other customers, once you're into a capital project, it's very expensive to stop a project and mothball a project. So we continued on. What was interesting is that our craft workers, about 80% of them continued to show up every day, not just our own workers, but our subcontractors, skilled tradespeople. They showed up every day. That's a typical day. We'll have 5% absenteeism from our craft force on any given job. We dropped to 20% absenteeism. We rebounded quickly by mid-April. So when the governor in Ohio and other states in early May allowed us to reopen our offices, I asked all of our administrative folks to come back to work. And I heard a lot of grumbling about, well, wait a minute, we're still allowed to work from home and we've been pretty efficient working from home. Can we not continue to work from home? And I reminded our folks that our revenue and our income and our ability to pay those back office salaries is driven by those craft workers who go out and build buildings every day. And our job is to support them. So we've been back up to about 95% in all of our offices over the last 2 months, 3 months, and we expect that to continue. We have allowed flexible work plans for our dual income families who, a lot of them have kids at home because they're doing school online. They can't come to work, they can't find daycare. So we're allowing flexible work arrangements for those who need it. And we're trying to still figure out our way through this. I think from what's the future look like, we're very concerned about what 2021 and 2022 will look like from a construction revenue standpoint. It's kind of ironic, our pipeline of identified project opportunities is near an all-time high. Across our 10 cities, we have $7 billion of projects that we've identified that we would pursue. And we would normally hit about a 40% success rate on the jobs we ultimately pursue. What we're worried about now is, do customers release those projects? If you're a higher ed customer and you plan to build a new academic building, do the optics work for you to release that project at a time when you've got 90% of your classes being taught online and kids sitting at home in their living room going to class? So we're not sure. Hopefully the election and a vaccine, getting both of those issues behind us, will free things up. But the future's uncertain from the COVID standpoint. The other thing I want to comment about just a minute is community. Brett mentioned our purpose to build better lives for our customers, communities, and each other. And we are very focused on making sure that we are being a part of creating a community where everyone thrives, everyone gets to be part of inclusive capitalism, and we have a community where new people want to come and build a business and hopefully need a building for their business when they get here. So we're very focused on giving back. Messer's well recognized in Cincinnati and our other 9 cities for being active participants in community boards, not just getting our name on a board list, but showing up and giving back and being active participants. And financially, we have a goal of giving back 10% of our pre-tax profits to our communities each year. And we're generally hitting that goal every year. And those are big dollars as we grow as a company. The other aspect of community is the diversity side. And there's no doubt we all feel the pressure right now about racial and economic disparities in our cities. It's highlighted, it's everywhere you turn, every day in the news, in the media. So what do we do about it? Well, one thing we do about it is we have created workforce development programs. Cincinnati's is called UDI, the Uptown Workforce Development Initiative, is exclusively focused on creating full-time first jobs for minorities from the city of Cincinnati. When we were awarded the Children's Hospital Tower 3 years ago, we made a commitment to Children's that we would set this program up specifically for that job, and we would create 50 new opportunities in the construction industry for minorities. Training, work readiness, work hardening, every aspect of getting people into the workforce. We're at 30 jobs today and 8 people in addition to that in some stage of going through the work readiness or work hardening. We've committed another 20 jobs to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center as part of the ED project that we were awarded earlier this year, and we are currently working on plans to expand the program across our business for all of our projects in Greater Cincinnati. The other side of diversity is diversity in leadership. If you look at our website and look at the leadership team of Messer, you won't see a lot of diversity. That's a challenge for us, like a lot of companies. Our organization as a whole is as diverse as the communities where we live and work, but our leadership is not. So last year, Tom and I went on a roadshow. It was his farewell tour. We went to all 10 cities. We collected questions from our employees. We said, what's on your mind? What do you want to hear about? We prioritized the questions we got back, and in that top 10 list of questions was a question about what are you doing about leadership diversity in Messer? My commitment in those 10 visits to those 10 cities was that in my tenure as CEO, the diversity of Messer's leadership will look like the diversity of our community at large. It's a tall order. I don't have all the answers, but I will tell you that it's a commitment that I think will make a difference for us and for our community for the long term. I think all of the community stuff is really about, are we creating a vibrant community for everybody who lives here, where everybody can participate? Last thought I'd share would be what keeps me up at night. The first thing is hiring and engaging young talent. I believe that and that talent goes not just for college grads, but also for these skilled trades workers that I've been talking about. I believe the millennials get a bad rap. I believe there were just as many people when I graduated from Purdue who had the idea that if I change jobs every 3 years, I'll get ahead in my career faster. And there's just as many people like me who said, you know what, if I'm going to find an employer to build a career at and stay there for 40 years, I'll do it. I do think we need to communicate differently with the younger generation, using technology, finding other ways to connect with them, and as I mentioned earlier, figuring out how they want to contribute back to the community, both in dollars and time, because it's different than the way I looked at it when I was a young person. The skilled trades keep me up at night. Our industry is not glamorous. It's very cold in the winter and very hot in the summer, and it's dirty and largely perceived as unsafe. Yet our skilled tradespeople earn $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. And those people don't come with any education at all, by and large, when they come into the trades. We're providing the training for them. So for the people in our community who say, you know what, college isn't for me, or I don't have the aptitude for college, or I don't want a $200,000 student loan to pay off when I'm finished, there are job opportunities in our construction industry and in other manufacturing industries, and we need to do a better job in our community of saying it's okay for you to take that job and use that to build your career. Finally, this whole idea of diversity. We have a big challenge in front of us, and we need to make meaningful change in our communities. I believe we're doing some of that, but I think we have a lot to learn, and I think all of us need to do a lot more listening around how do we create a more diverse community, workforce, nonprofit organization, diversity structure, all of those things to make our communities better. So as you just heard, all the things that keep me up at night relate to talent. And that's the challenge that all of us face in our businesses. How do you attract the talent, not just to our companies, but how do we attract the talent to our city here in Cincinnati to make it better and help us continue to thrive as a community? I want to thank you again for inviting me to talk today, and I very much appreciate the Rotary. As Brett mentioned, I was a visitor here, I believe it was 1999 with Steve Haber. He invited me to attend a meeting, and he talked to me about joining Rotary, and it's right about the time I went on my roadshow. So here I am 15 years later. Maybe somebody will sell me again. Questions? Yes.
So my older daughter is a sophomore studying civil engineering at University of Dayton.
Nice.
Sorry, self-serving.
That's all right. Lots of UD grads at Messer.
Talk to me about women, especially in construction and engineering, just broadly, and then just with
Yeah. So within our firm, actually, yep. Thank you very much. So the question is about women in the construction industry. What do we see broadly, and what do we see within Messer? Having women engineers has been much easier for us than minority engineers. We actually have a very strong women engineering workforce. We've done a lot of things to accommodate women, working moms who work different schedules, flex schedules. They're still full-time employees of the company, but we try to find ways to accommodate them so they can be engaged in our business in the same way as a man coming to work every day and building buildings. So, and in terms of recruiting, we love UD, we love UC, we love a lot of the different universities across our 10 cities. So if she's looking for an internship or co-op, have her send me a resume. Question in the back. We do. The question is, does Messer have a mentorship program? So we have a couple of different affinity groups in the organization with specific mentoring programs. They're not formal company programs. So for instance, our Messer Women in Management group is kind of an ad hoc committee that focuses on engaging our women engineers and our women craftspeople from across the company. They do community service, but they're also very focused on providing one-on-one coaching relationships for the women as they navigate how to work through the challenges that they face in their career. We have a similar program for the minorities across the company. That's probably a little more developed, but it's a good way to give people an extra set of support that they may not otherwise get. Yes? Yes. Yeah, the question is, what's Brendan Zenny doing? I just found out today, I actually didn't know this, but it makes good sense to me that he took a 6-month hiatus from Rotary. We opened our office in Raleigh 2 years ago, and Brendan is a really, really gifted salesperson. Our salesperson in Raleigh worked for us for about a year down there and decided that it wasn't what they wanted to do with their career, so they left. So we engaged Brendan to spend time with our Raleigh leadership team and out selling our customers in Raleigh. So he spends about half his time in Raleigh, or at least focused on Raleigh sales activities. Yes?
Comment and question. First, I wanted to commend the Messer for your great commitment to the construction industry as a leader of the community and representing allied construction industry. And I wonder if you could share a little color about the apprenticeship program. You have a laborer's apprenticeship program and a carpenter's apprenticeship program. These are open shop programs.
Yes. So the question is more information about Messer's apprenticeship program. So Messer is one of the few non-trade union sponsors of a Department of Labor apprenticeship program anywhere in the country. We did this because we wanted to be able to develop our own talent. It's a very high bar to be able to train people to the Department of Labor standards, but we have programs for both laborers and carpenters. So back to that career building that I talked about, someone can come into Messer with a commitment to be a skilled tradesperson, and we will provide all the training through a labor apprenticeship or a carpenter apprenticeship program. ACI has been our long-term partner in executing this program. We actually have employees from other open shop companies in Greater Cincinnati who participate in that, and we're very proud of our ability to train that workforce of the future. Yes, Doug. Wow, that's a loaded question. So the question is more information about the Messer ESOP. So it is a recirculating stock plan. The employees don't buy in. The stock is granted to them over time. It's usually a percentage target of their annual compensation. We make distributions at the end of each year to their accounts. So probably the easiest way to kind of bundle all those questions up is to say we do an annual valuation. Alex Partners from Chicago is our valuation firm, so it's a very rigorous annual process to value the stock. At the year you retire, you have to cash out your shares, so the company needs to make the market for that stock. Generally, as a rule of thumb, we would see somebody who spends a 40-year career with Messer having, depending on their salary and their role in the company, having a retirement benefit of anywhere from $1 to $10 million. So it's significant. We did some benchmarking against 401ks, and if you take a 401k where the individual puts in 5% and the company matches 2.5%, the aggregate of those dollars ends up yielding a benefit that's about half of what the 100% Messer-funded ESOP benefit is for our employees. So significantly better than just participating in a 401k program and 100% paid by the company. We're very proud of it, and as I said earlier, it's hard to beat an operating model where you're engaging people both on a professional development basis and on an ownership basis. It changes their attitude, not just about how they look at themselves and their company, but how they serve their customers. And the best part about being private is we don't answer to anybody in terms of a long-term investment that's going to take years to pay off. We can make those bets. Yes?
I just wanted to thank you for your emphasis on diversity in your suppliers. I'm actually one of your 20%. So my company, a woman-owned company, was hired to document the building of District 3 Police Station on the west side. And it was a great thing. And it also resulted in a documentary that's been on PBS and is going to be at the Better Cities Film Festival this year. We're hosting it October 3rd, everybody. If you want to go, it's at Hollywood Drive-In, so you can go to the drive-in, and it just goes on. And it featured Jonathan Bachman, who was the project manager.
That's right.
On it, and he was just so fabulous. So kudos to Jonathan and to you for emphasizing diversity.
Thank you very much, Lori. So Yeah, we're very proud of that building. It's actually the first net zero project that Messer has done. We've done lots of high efficient LEED Gold, LEED Platinum buildings, but that was our first net zero building. And we're happy that the city of Cincinnati made the investment in modeling that here. Anything else? Yes? Actually 10, one in each city. That's a great question. So of the 10 regional leaders, all but one started their career at Messer. Actually, several of them started as co-ops like I did. All but one started their career at Messer, and one came from another construction company about 10 years into his career. And all but one do have college degrees. One of them worked their way up as a carpenter foreman, superintendent, project manager, and the more field route to leadership in the organization.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a great presentation, and I'll tell you, so impressive what Messer is doing in the community. And two things about that. One is what you're doing in your own community for your employees in terms of creating opportunities, but also what you're doing in the larger community, creating opportunities. Really, really impressive, really, and a high ethical example too. And I would say you're a natural for Rotary. So we'll talk. Because we have high ethical standards. We're focused on the community. We're focused, as you are, on improving the lives of those around us. A lot of what we do is focused on our local community in various ways. We're also focused on a global community. One of the things that we have been focused on globally as Rotary International is eliminating polio, eradicating it from the face of the earth. We've made super progress. Only 2 countries left in the world still have polio. And in appreciation for you speaking today, Tim, we're going to make a donation in your honor to the Global Polio Eradication Program. So thank you again very much. And the key word, one of the key words in your presentation today was opportunities. And our theme for this Rotary year is Rotary Opens Opportunities. And we actually have a pin that commemorates that. Well, I'd like to give you one. So thank you, Tim. So I just want to thank everybody who joined today in person. I also want to thank the Rotarians who joined by Zoom. Great to have you as part of this. And just a reminder, next week our guest will be John Morris Russell from Cincinnati Pops. Wish everyone a great weekend and hope to see you all next week. Meeting adjourned.